Welcome back to the Built on Air podcast. We are glad to be with you. We've got myself, Dan Fellers, regular host Camille Parks, and Ali Alosa with us. Welcome back as always. Good to have you. And we have a special guest with us, Russell Bishop. He's a returning guest. Glad to have you with us, Russ.
Great to be here.
We'll be getting to know a little bit about Russ. We highlighted him last week, but we're going to go deeper into his award-winning interface later in the show. Award-winning, contest-winning is probably more accurate. So, as always, our Built on Air podcast, a live show every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern. We go through 4 different segments. I'll walk through what we're going to be talking about today. We always start with our Around the Basis of what's going on, keep you up to date on the Airtable communities. Then we will spotlight our primary sponsor, Onto Air. Then Russ will be showcasing his contest-winning interface of My Wardrobe. And then Ali will be going through the Page Designer and some advanced tricks with Page Designer app. And then a shout out to our community. And then finally, Camille will finish off with a scripting, showing how to interact with linked records and whatnot. So with that, we will start with Around the Bases. Relatively quiet week on the community front. No feature releases that I'm aware of. But there was one. This is from a previous announcement that came out. I think we talked about it last week. And but there was something hidden that came out a couple of days ago that we haven't got. So it's still a mystery. So this is this comment right here by Nathaniel asking about more details for the linked record ID. So you can sort by linked record, like quarter project, and asking what it meant, because it says it was a request from this Jose Martinez. And so, and then Alan adds on, if it's this request from Jose, then it's a pretty big one. And Carlson adding, so they didn't clarify like what that meant. Anybody know what this is referring to?
Yeah, I think actually this is a script demo I almost was going to do for today. It's being able to sort the linked records within a field by a particular field of that linked record. Right. So you can't, the only control you have over it is you can only drag them around manually, and they're added in the same order that they're added. Like if you link records, you link 1, 2, 3, they're going to be in order 1, 2, 3. But you can change that by dragging them around. There's ways with scripting to be able to automatically sort that field, but it would be amazing if we could just have a little toggle within that field configuration to decide what we want to sort by.
Interesting. But it doesn't look like it's live yet?
No, I don't think so. I think that there's a little confusion over it, but I'm not sure what they're asking.
So that was the request.
Right.
That was this request, but it doesn't look like that's what they went live with.
No, it's not live.
Do you think that sorting would persist, or is that supposed to be everywhere that is set? It has one set of sorting, or can you like reuse it in other places?
It's a good question. I would think it would persist on whatever you would set it to, right? So like this linked record field, I want to be sorted by date, or I want to keep this alphabetical. I
guess it's the same as applying the limit selection to view, right? It's set once between those two tables.
Yeah.
Not that it exists, but I imagine that's what the behavior would be.
Right. Yeah, I would think. Yeah, I would go crazy if that were released. That's like a huge thing that I use automations and scripting a lot to take care of. Like if I want my report that I'm generating to be sorted in a certain order, then that's what you would need to do. And this would solve that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it doesn't appear that there's any UI changes that would reflect this. So maybe that was an Easter egg that they provided.
Was it?
Because they list it as having gone live.
Oh gosh. Yeah, no, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, and enough time has passed where it's not just refresh your
Yeah.
base and it'll be there. So yeah, I don't know what's happening with this
Yeah.
Yeah, apologies. I was confused at the top of this call as well. But that's what I would hope it'd be referring to, but no, it's not released.
So Kavan says, thought it was filtering by a specific record versus contains. They did.
Kavan.
They did add that filter, that new filter option.
The filtering. It's actually
that makes sense.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Kavan.
Gotcha. So it's not in where you link to the record. It's at the top level filtering.
It's the wording that's confusing, right? Because it starts with filter and then adds sort by, but I don't think there's any sorting there. I see what they're trying to say though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I got thrown off. But yeah, I think that's what they were. The comment below was saying, I think you're talking about this, but yeah, it wasn't, unfortunately.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right, maybe that's mystery solved. We'll see if there's any more announcement. We'll definitely bring it to you. But yeah, the other thing that eventually, if they have the ability to like dynamically filter your link records off of a value in your current record, that would be big.
That would be huge.
Yeah. So, anyways, all right. Well, maybe we got our hopes up a little too soon there. The other thing, just coming from the Reddit community, this thread is about this smart suite. I bet I know Gareth did a video on this, so it kind of got some buzz. I know we talked about it in the Built on Air community a little bit. It's not mainly what I want to talk about, although I think that is interesting. It's a somewhat competitive product to Airtable. So if you're looking for an alternative, maybe check out Smart Suite. But what was more interesting was in the comment sections. This right here. As far as I know, two-way sync is coming to Airtable soon. Product keeps getting better. Where did you see this? What is two-way sync? You know what? I feel like there was more discussion. Oh, wait. Oh, I got to go down. I was going to say, I thought I saw more discussion on that. Can confirm two-way syncing is in beta right now. We are in said beta. It's pretty awesome so far. Any issues with it? No issues. It's similar in that you can't utilize link to record fields in the destination base. You also can't make new records from the destination base, but overall it's a huge feature improvement. Awesome. So that is pretty cool. I had heard through the grapevine that this was coming, but this is the first public where I felt comfortable sharing it. But so that's cool, two-way syncing. So I don't think that's with like external sources, like their one-way sync with Salesforce or whatever. I think that's just within bases. Although it is disappointing that you can't create a record. I think that would be a common use case to create a record on the synced side. So I don't know, any thoughts on two-way syncing coming?
I remember like forever ago when one-way syncing was announced, they were like, plenty of people were like, oh, it would be even more helpful if two-way syncing was available. And someone from Airtable was like, yep, we think it would be helpful too. And then that was kind of it. And that was like a year or more ago. So This is also the first time I had heard that actual sort of progress had been made on, building that feature in there.
Yeah. And I know there's people on enterprise plan here that may not be able to share what they know, so that's okay. But this is public, so we can at least share what people are saying publicly about it.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because it's kind of the use case for that seems like a good sharing permissions workaround. Like I'm just going to create a version of my base, let people, it's kind of like the editable shared links, right? It's just another hacky way of us getting around the fact that sharing permissions are a bit dud.
Yeah. But the difference there is you still have to be a paid editor tier to edit on the destination.
Yeah, true.
So
But
it
if
doesn't
everything
get around that.
If everything is synced, well, I guess not everything would be synced, just the synced tables. But
yeah,
if you're syncing over bits, and everything in that new base is stuff that's synced over, they don't need to be editor privileged because there's nothing to edit.
Yeah, true. So that was cool. Cool little insight there on what might be coming. A couple other things. This is from the Built on Air community, kind of our quarterly reminder of limitations on extensions. So somebody asked that actually did run into the limit of 10 extension types. Camille, I see you're on here.
Mm-hmm.
Justin and Scott also chiming in. Camille, you want to give a summary?
So there was some confusion about what the 10 extension limit actually means. I think the original assumption in this thread was it's 10 types of extensions you can have. And then Justin and I clarified it's actually the number of installs, not the number of types. So if you had 10 charts, that's hitting the limit. If you had 5 charts and 5 page designers, that's hitting the limit. And the scripting extension is the only one that's exempt from all of those. And then if you make your own custom extension, that's also exempt, but that's rare. And then I think Scott jumped in and said, well, if you have disabled extensions, those don't count. So there's a bunch of different things all together that are affecting whether or not you're going to hit that limit. And I think it was, the reminder to just disable an extension if you're not using it often is a good sort of, reminder that, you can keep more than 10 in there. You just can't have them all active at once.
Yep. Good reminder. Comes up probably quarterly. All right. Moving on. A couple announcements. So if you are in the LA area, Airtable is doing a happy hour as part of a conference from Adobe. So Camille, you will be there?
I will.
All right. So you can meet Camille in person if you're in the area.
Finally.
Yeah. I don't think I'll be in the area that day. I think it's October 17th. Is that when it was?
Yeah, on a Monday. I actually don't know who in the Airtable sphere is also in Los Angeles. I feel like everyone's in Texas.
Yeah.
Or Colorado.
Jordan's New York, I think, isn't she?
I think.
Yeah, I think she's in New York, so maybe Jordan will be there. All right. Another one I found on Twitter from Philip Lakin, who runs a no-code community, putting on a conference, a no-code conference in Atlanta, no-code ops conference. So this fall, to be determined on exact dates. And I think just has kind of a sign up right now, but could be interesting. I don't know. Maybe I'll take a trip out to Atlanta if this looks interesting, but thought I'd get the word out there. If you're in that area or want to make a trip out there, could be of interest. This one will be broader. It'll be more than just Airtable, but definitely Airtable will be a major component of that.
Awesome.
So that's kind of everything going on. Any other announcements, news going on in the communities this week?
Not that I saw.
Yeah, just always the ongoing help and everything, but I didn't see any breaking news. Just recovering from the contest, I imagine. So no updates, but we shall see next week. All right, let's move on. Primary sponsor, Onto Air is an all-one toolkit to run your business on Airtable. If you rely on Airtable as a core component to your business, you ought to check out Onto Air to see if it can help with that. Variety of different apps that help you improve your business operations in Airtable. For today's spotlight, I want to continue our discussion. We are in a open beta with our new Forms product, releasing new functionality, working with early customers, checking out the new form solution. So we just did some additions this week. I thought I'd spotlight our formula builder. So we have the ability to run formulas on the fly client side, because if you update any of your fields, your formula in Airtable isn't going to update unless we sent it back to the server, which we didn't want to do until you're done and want to submit. So we have a client-side formula builder and engine that works with any of the fields as well as any of your linked record fields. So it can do roll-up type formulas and anything of that sort. So that is a cool new feature. And so we've got kind of a form builder that will improve over time, but it does the basics. You can insert your your variable parameters from your form, and it will update there. And the cool thing is you can actually then save the value of that formula back into a editable text field. So if you want to just run a formula here and then save the value of it back into Airtable, it has that functionality. So very cool stuff coming. If you want to get into the beta, we'll provide a link or reach out to us on chat, and we'll get you in the beta for Forms. A couple more weeks of a beta, and then we'll be ready to release it to the wider community without going through the beta. What formula language? It actually is a library that's more based off of Excel. So it actually supports all of the Excel formulas. So actually has more support than what Airtable has for some formulas. So we do have a help document that has all of the formulas and standard math. So it's more of a just kind of a formula engine off of Excel. So, but it does have some financial formulas as well, statistical analysis, roll-ups. So yeah, there's the list. So thanks for the question, Camille. Can you copy paste Airtable formulas? Yes and no. Some may copy over. But we do things a little bit different, especially with linked records. If you're calculating like a roll-up field, the syntax is a little bit different there. But basic formulas, you likely would be able to copy over. You may need to edit them a little bit. But yeah, it's probably not a one-to-one solution on that front. All right. Moving on, we're now going to dive into interfaces with Russ. If you want to share your screen.
Awesome.
There you go.
Take it away, Russ.
Yep.
Cool. So there was a very helpful introduction that Camille did last week about how my wardrobe works. So this is the set of interfaces that I submitted into the competition. I'm going to run through two bits of functionality which are automation based, just to dive into a little bit about how I did that. Some of it involves some scripting. My JavaScript is pretty poor, to say the least, but it is good enough to put something like this together, which is hopefully a bit of a testimonial to no-code tools, is that you can be sloppy and still get the job done. I'll give a quick overview of what the interface and base does, and then we'll hop into how some of the functionality works. Before I start, quick caveat, I am not a fashionable person, and all of this effort towards collecting clothes and comparing and building outfits was just an idea of mine that doesn't actually really suit my lifestyle. You can ask anyone who knows me and they will tell you I'm not a fashionable person by any means, but maybe this would help you on that journey, I'd hope. So we'll have a look at...
These are not your real clothing?
No, none of them are. In fact, a slight tip, I actually just went looking for some quite nicely cropped clothes online so that they'd look good in the base. Maybe that was cheating. Who knows? So just a quick kind of overview of what's happening in here. So we have the items table in my wardrobe, and each item is categorized as a piece of clothing. So this interface here is the item gallery. It just gives you a rough breakdown of what you have in your wardrobe. And then it gives you a shortcut to go in and edit one of those items. For some reason, it jumps you through the record there and then into the interface. But so that's items. You store metadata about your clothes. And then the point of the base is that you would then collect those into outfits. So in here, this is what's called the outfit builder in the create outfit interface. And basically you can hop through and change some of the layers in here. If you were watching last week, you would have seen that none of these automations were working. Annoyingly, that's because you need automations from the base to actually make it function. And the link that was provided, I think, was to Universe, which, as we all saw, doesn't copy over your interface or your automations for you. So that's why it wasn't working last time. But these are the kind of two automations I want to jump into. One of them is about changing a layer. And the other one is saving an outfit. So I've made something that's fairly unwearable here through my 6 items of clothes. Each item has a layer 1, layer 2. If I liked it enough, I can then choose to save my outfit. And that will run an automation, which basically takes a copy of the configuration we've got here. And if you go into my outfits, you now have that outfit saved in here. And you can also later on choose to edit it, which pushes it back into that interface, and you can edit it again. So the first automation we'll have a look at, and I'll go from the interface so you can see each of the steps it goes through, is change. So each of these buttons here, updates. I'll just try and zoom in so you've hopefully got a slightly better view here. So it updates 4 fields. The first one is that it takes the current record that we're looking at. So right now we're actually looking at a single record called new outfit in the outfits table. It's the only one that has a flag on it, so you can't technically navigate away from it. But that is what allows us to have all of these linked items to this single record. And so what we're doing is we're updating the new outfit record to say, I want to find something from upper, which is this one we're about to change here. I want to change layer 1. I'm going to run an automation called change, and then I'm going to change the status to changing. So these first 2 is just sending some instructions to the automation we're going to run. And then this last one here triggers the automation. The last point here, where we change the status to changing, just updates this little status bar at the top to tell the user I've actually clicked something. That's actually a really important part of this, and something that anyone who's built interfaces will probably have figured out by now, is that often an automation can take like at least 4 seconds if it's doing a find, sometimes 10, depending on how Airtable was behaving that day. So it's always good to update something on the screen to tell them something's happening in the background before you just, wait for an output. And I'll demonstrate that for you in a second. There's a little bit of trickery around here that makes it seem faster than it actually is. So those are the 4 fields that we're going to change. And if I hop into the base here, so as I said, we're now in the outfits table, and this is the only record that we really care about. This is new outfit. The rest of them are all of my saved outfits that I've got from before. So you can see here, if I just run that automation quickly, we'll say change upper 1. It's now changed these records in here to say upper body, layer 1, change, and then it updated some statuses. So when it does that, it is triggering an automation up here, which for some reason needs a while to load.
Here's the longer version.
Wow. This is actually quite a simple base. I might even give it a refresh. And this is probably the first bit where you'll realize that my scripting abilities are quite crap. I've got a separate automation for every version of the change button. I know that many of you out there would go, you fool, just have one automation and decide what to do at the beginning. But, time was of the essence, and it's a bit above my skill set. So what we'd have just triggered there is this first one, change upper layer 1. And what it does is it does a check to say, has this run before? or is this the first time it's running? Now that's really important because if you ran this automation to say, first thing I want you to do is go into find records, find me all the other layer 1 upper body stuff, get me the next one and set it, that find is really slow. And it's far too long for you to wait for an image to reload. It was quite a crappy experience. So what I did as a little workaround is that every time you run this, I have a second field, which is upper body 1 next, and it basically sets up what the next one will be. So instead of waiting for the finds to happen, what I do is just update the record, and I say, get the item that we prepared last time in the next up field and move it into layer 1. So we don't have to wait for the find records to happen and the user sees what's happened in front of them. And then afterwards, I do the find where I need to find what the next item will be. And with that find, I then just push that data into the next up field. So the user never sees this kind of hidden next up field. It's only used for the outfit builder, but it means they get a result quicker. So that's like a little workaround that helps that be a bit smoother. So basically this check is just to see if we've ever populated the next up field before. So it's only like the first time you use this basic, you'll actually need to do that. We'll have a quick look at the script as well. I think it's fairly simple. Which is lots of console logging and experimentation, but basically make a list of all the items that we have, find out what the current one's number was, get the next number. If there isn't a next number, go to the beginning of the list. So it's kind of just sifting through the array, and then whatever that item is, put it into the next up field for our next time that we run it. And so now you're seeing a bit of the inefficiency, right? Because you've all just realized that I've got this exact same script written in 12 places.
I'm just curious how many scripts had you written before this? Like how many?
I've written a lot of scripts,
okay,
but I wouldn't want to share them with anyone because they're poor. I just know enough JavaScript to get by, and every time I start writing a script, I'm like, okay, kind of know how variables work, I know how arrays work, but I still need to look up all of the syntax and make sure I remember what async actually is. But enough to do something simple like this, right? Like get an array of items, get me the next one in it, and update a record is pretty simple to do.
Nice.
So that is how those change buttons work. And the trick there being is that don't make the user wait for the find records thing. Obviously your base schema is a bit muckier to have those two fields that do the same thing, but it means that the results come back within a few seconds instead of like 10 seconds basically. That's the update time. The other automation I'll take you through is how save outfit works. This one's a lot simpler, and you may have probably guessed it now that you've seen the design of the base and specifically the items table. So we'll just have a look at the functionality of that button. Oh, don't want to move it. Anyone who designs interfaces in Airtable knows that is a problem. Yeah. Click something and everything moves. So the first thing does run an automation. It uses this. I use a select field to run the automations. It's an old way of doing it, but the newer way of using buttons to run an automation didn't exist when this contest started. So that could be updated, but I haven't. And then also just change the status so the user knows that something's happening.
But you couldn't. You can only have one action per button. Is that right?
Correct.
So
so if I ran the
automation, and I guess from the automation you could update the field, but you couldn't do what you were doing there.
Exactly, and that brings us back to exactly the same problem though, right? Because I'd be doing an update record which has a delay, which we've just seen on moving one thing to another. So I would imagine if we did it like that, it would be slower anyway. Mm-hmm. There is that. And the save automation is very simple because we have the exact same schema for this fake new outfit record into the ones below it. So when we set it to save, create a record, it's going to grab all the information from the new outfit one, which has all of the items. and then it'll create a record in the same table, and it just does a complete clone of all the information you give them to it, and adds in a handy name, which is outfit and today's date. And that is how you save your outfits. So those are the two automations.
Very cool.
It's awesome. It's cool that, you know, like just a simple 2-table base can generate like this kind of experience with the interfaces. You know,
yeah, it's kind of why I wanted to do it as well. Keeps it simple.
Right. Before, without interfaces, like that base would not be much to look at.
Yeah, this would be unwieldy.
Yeah.
If you didn't have interfaces, you could still have done the same thing, set up the same automations and whatnot, but like to look at it all, I guess, in a gallery view, but it would be, you know, it's so hard to edit anything in a gallery view. It really can't do much in it other than just show you things. And so I was saying last week that your interface, I couldn't immediately tell that it was Airtable necessarily. You came up with a layout and implementation that didn't like scream, I'm looking at an Airtable interface, and that you just sort of showed how flexible it was.
Yeah, and the nice thing of that is, you know, in my day job, I run design ops for an agency called Lighthouse. I do a lot of dashboard design and stuff that is very, very different to this. So it was a nice break to think about it more as like a consumer tool, because I don't really get to do a lot of that. So yeah, it is unique, and I could do, you know, an interesting layout with the linked records, and like I rarely get to use galleries because we don't do anything that has imagery attached. So it was a nice excuse to make something a bit more attractive and less data heavy.
I know you've come out with your own designs or improvements for the UI experience. I've seen some of your mock-ups in the past. What's your wish list for an interface designer?
Well, interestingly, I've got a session on Thursday, which I think a group of the winners are invited to talk to the product team about improvements to Interface Designer. Nice. It's a group session, so I feel like it might be the loudest voice gets heard. So, you know, luckily I've got quite a loud voice, so that should be all right for me. But yeah, to be honest, my main thing is partly around functionality in Interface Designer. So things like deleting a record when it's linked. I'm sick of like setting up these fake select automations to run like delete this thing. It's obviously a waste of all of our time to have that and write a little script that does it. So stuff like that, just, you know, make things easier for me. I don't need to ask my users to go into the base just to delete something or, you know, do some workaround. My major gripe, I suppose, is just around the navigation in Interface Designer. We've seen from some of the previews that they are completely, well, not only overhauling the navigation for Interface Designer, but also just how this is all structured and making it feel more like a product that you've built rather than a set of pages that people can hop between. So I know that that's on their roadmap, but yeah, things like if I had another section of interfaces outside of this one, you can't really get to them without going to the base, which is the noisy view, and then going back in, and you know, the navigation is just not easy there, especially if you want to move an interface from one section to another. It's impossible, which is a big problem when you want to change your sitemap for users. So yeah, a few things like that. My other big one, as a tidbit, is like numbers. So numbers are really lovely to have in an interface, right? Especially if you're putting together a dashboard of key figures. But we don't always want to have a number as being like, go to a table, find me all of these things, filter it. Like it might just be that this record has a column with a number in it. I just want to show that number. Yeah. It's pretty simple, right? Like I care about the appearance of this and not so much the functionality you're giving me with numbers. So just let me set any field to look like this with a label below it. It will just give me so much more control.
Agreed.
Yeah. You know, colors, give me some conditional colors as well. Like sometimes the number's positive, sometimes it's negative. I don't want to have to make another field with an emoji in it that describes like how you should emotionally react to this negative number. So yeah, like stuff like that would just make it simple, right? Like we've got conditional colors in other places.
Yep.
You know.
I agree with those last two bits are some things. The first time I pulled in a number component, I was like, oh, this is nice. And then I was like, why can't I use this?
Yeah.
It was a little odd. And then the conditional color things, it's like throughout the product or throughout the interface section of the product. I noticed the other day that you could have a checkbox field, and if you set it to large, it doesn't respect the color you applied to it in the field settings. It's just green. I was like, but I told you to be orange. Why?
Oh,
yeah, there's a lot of bits like
So-
that.
Kavan had a question for you, Russ. How do you see these techniques and other bases for other use cases?
Yeah, I mean, there's saving and clearing stuff. So this is kind of new behavior that I haven't explored before, right? In that you have like an area where you can explore and then save things for later. The only problem with that, and it's kind of a metaphor for why we have forms, is that this is a single user base, right? So if I share this with you guys and you hopped in, we'd be building an outfit together. We can't do it individually. So it makes it a little bit of a specific use case because it falls apart as soon as two people are using this base. But the idea of cloning the record,
Well, I have ideas. So you would need more. We're looking at one template record in your outfits table, right? If you, and I think you can do this by script. If you had one template record per collaborator, you can get all collaborators in a base using a script, and then link them all to a record and use that collaborator, assign it to a user field. Then this page could filter down and only show you the current collaborator's template, and then it would work the same way. And you could choose to carry over the linked collaborator or not. Maybe you just have a table full of all outfits, or you could have a table full of all outfits, and each outfit is still linked to whoever made it. I guess it would
filter by collaborator.
It wouldn't carry over in a created by field because it's created by automation. But you could
use last modified because it does do if someone clicks a button to change a single select field, it does respect who clicked that button as the last modified by. I've been doing
it.
Does it work if you have lots of, I feel like if you threw enough people at it, Airtable would get confused at some point and be like, I don't know who clicked it last. Totally. One of you do it.
If two people clicked it in quick succession, then it could step over each other.
Yeah. But I mean, that is a great kind of Stockholm syndrome workaround of how we could make this work for ourselves. But really, this is what you want form design to one day look like in Airtable, right? Like this could be a type of form that I've put together, and behind the scenes I'm building what each of these linked records is, but this is what the user gets to view. At the moment, this is why people build form solutions on top of Airtable. It is very basic, but it does give us that single opportunity where a user just sees what their input is and that's it. But ideally this would be a kind of advanced form you could put together that is pulling in linked records and all that kind of stuff, filtered by things that you should be able to see, that kind of thing.
Kavan mentioned similar idea of using a placeholder for each user.
That would be cool.
Yep.
There you go.
I think we have to call it our wardrobe at that point, but
nice. Well done. Thank you, Russ, for showing that. Congrats. I assume you used your winnings towards your wedding.
I mean, I don't have it yet, but it will go towards paying it off. Yeah.
Congrats. Russ just got married, so
timing.
Was able to dress appropriately for the wedding. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. We will continue on. Our next segment will be on Page Designer with Ali. There you go.
Excellent. All right. So this is actually something I kind of have been playing with for a little bit. And I just found an even easier way to do it. It's a little bit of setup on the back end, but it's super useful, I've found, for situations like this use case, which is putting together a monthly ad out of some records in your base. It could also be useful for like a label use case, like if you had to print a sheet of labels. And essentially what's happening here is we're taking individual records. This is a base of inventory for a truck dealership, happens to be my family's truck dealership. So I'm very familiar with it. This ad we would need to generate once a month. And instead of having to train somebody on how to use Photoshop or InDesign or Canva, I mean, we do use Canva, but this makes it a lot easier because we've got all of the information we need for the ad right in Airtable. So Page Designer works really well for if you need to create a sheet per one record. And that's really what it does, is one page equals one record in a table. But you can use anything that's also linked to that record on that page as well. I've gone over the basics of Page Designer in an episode last year, which if anyone's interested, I think that would be a useful video to watch. But what's different about this is this actually has 3 different units on it. And I'm going to go over quickly how I got that to work. So over here, I have a table called Summary. And on this table, I have it linked to several different things throughout the base. There's a bunch of different things you can use this technique for. But for now, I'm going to focus on just these 2 tables and then the all current inventory. So I've got Summary. I like to use emojis for that record just because it's going to be appearing in all these random places and it just makes it a lot more fun. And then I've got my Ad Builder table. So this table just has 3 records on it, 1, 2, 3, which are these 3 records here. And because they're all linked to that summary record, that allows me to get them all on this one page in Page Designer. So if I look at my settings here, I've got this pointed at my summary table. So I'm not going to have, I'm only ever going to have one page here because I only have one record on this table, if that makes sense. So because I've got these attachment fields in here on the summary table, I'm able to drag them in to Page Designer. Like if I wanted to put this phone number somewhere, like these are just elements that maybe I've made in Canva and dragged into Airtable as attachments. So that way I can drag them around my page and design like the template for my ad, how I want it. Same with the background. The way I got that background to work is that's just the gradient image and I have it filled. I use the fill for the fit mode and then have it stretching over the entire page. It just makes it a lot nicer looking than a solid color. But here's where things get really cool. So I've got each one of these units. So this is linked to my all current inventory table. And then I'm able to pull in the specs about that unit and everything that I need to put on this page. And then I've got these 3 views here. And this is the most important part. I've got these filtered just by that slot number that I've set. So this view is going to be for slot number 1, this view for slot number 2, and this for slot number 3. And I have them locked because many reasons, but mostly so that I myself don't forget and go here and change these filters looking for something else, because that's really going to mess up what's shown on this ad. So I have them locked, and if I try to unlock it, it's going to tell me locked for Page Designer. So I remember. And also so nobody else messes it up either. And so if let's say I'm going to just like delete this one here so I can kind of show you how it's built. I'll just leave it there. So I want to find my linked record field for Ad Builder because I'm on my summary table. I need information from these 3 records. So I'm going to be pulling that field in. So if I pull in Ad Builder, you can see it's kind of hard to see there, but by default, it makes it this table, right? So I could pull in the pics or whatever I might need about that unit. But it's all 3 of those units and it's all in a table format. So I don't actually want to continue with this. I'm going to make a couple little tweaks and you will see what that does. So if I only have the pictures as that data point that I want to pull in, I want to just do just the first image. And I actually don't want any headers. And I also don't want any borders on my table. And then here's the part where those views come into play. Because right now I've got just those 3 photos, but I only want the one. So this filter records option here, if I make this slot 1, then I'm only going to have my image for that one unit. So if I make this the same size as everything else, just kind of drag it around. And then I know I made all of the other ones 200. Oops, this is a weird little bug. You can't start over typing that number. So now I've got that, and I have a border around it like the others. I want it to be white. This needs to go into the front, so this is kind of handy. You can arrange these, so if I bring that to the front, then that comes up nicely. I want that to be a little bit more further down. And then this needs to go to the front as well. And so this is another, just an attachment image that I have on the summary table, that little starburst thing. So now I can make everything there. I'm just going to duplicate this element, because once you get one of these set up, it makes it super easy, because you can just do this, duplicate it, and then go change the slot number to which one you need. So I'm going to duplicate this. And move that over. And then move that to slot 1. So now I've got all of my images in there, or all of my slots set up. And the cool part about this is now all I need to do for next month, if I need to change out the units, I can just come here, get rid of it. Oh, that's there because I have this override specs here. I have places on these records here where I can actually override what's written here, just in case the system doesn't have correct data or it's missing data. But now I can just go ahead and pick another unit, and it's going to populate with that imagery. I get rid of all my override. So you can see this one actually does not have add specs. So that's where I would need to use my override. Like, this truck is awesome. And then, yeah, that's basically it. I mean, I didn't get super crazy with this, but you can switch out your stuff. And then if I need to put something else in that little starburst, I can say this is a bus. Sometimes, you know, it's not perfect because it's not going to adjust the text for you. So I might need to go back in and like click on this and make the line height a little smaller. You know, adjust as needed, but it really saves a lot of time.
Yeah. That's so cool. That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's great. And also very easy for someone else to come along and just set up another 3 units on there and export it. That's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, it works out really well. And I have, in my live version, I have a couple different sizes. We've got one that's got like 12 units, and then another that only has 6, and then 3, just for the different sizes that we need. And yeah, it's super flexible, and nobody needs to learn how to use Photoshop.
Yeah. Very cool. Thank you, Ali, for sharing that.
Of course.
Get some shout outs from Kavan and Scott in here.
Thank you.
Scott's gonna buy a big rig. All right. Next, we will give a quick shout out. If you're not in the Built on Air community, we want you in there. Join us. There's thousands of Airtable users in there helping each other out, talking about the latest and greatest of Airtable. So if you are an Airtable fan, then you need to join us at builtonair.com/join. Love to have you with us. Our final segment will be scripting time with Camille. There you go, Camille.
Okay, so this is kind of inspired by a client project that I had recently worked on that I thought the basic premise has a lot of use cases. And I think it's been covered in a various different ways. And actually the way it was done for this client is different from how I did it today. But essentially what we have in this like demo base I have is a couple number of projects, and each project is a type, whether it's minor, average, or major. And you'll see I have a number of required tasks. If I go to my levels or categories or whatever for my projects, minor, average, major, I could see each one of those is linked to a number of template tasks. And if I go to my template tasks, I'll see I have a couple of routine things I do for various different types of projects, and some of them are applicable to all types of projects, and some are only applicable to one or two types of projects. And that's how you get varying numbers of required tasks for each type. And the idea is when you create a new project and you want to apply all of the tasks to each project based on its type, you want to do that pretty easily, but you don't want to override any tasks that are already in there. So if I go to my task table, you'll see that the Elm Court project has a couple of the template tasks already in there that are accurately assigned. And so the idea was to create a script, and there's a bunch of different forms of this script that exist already. But what mine is doing is it's looking at the type for each project, looking at the template tasks that are required of it, and then adding only the template tasks that don't already exist in the tasks table. And hopefully that makes sense. The script is not, exciting to look at. So I'm just going to run it once and then explain what happens. And hopefully I don't run into an error. Okay. So what's happening?
Can you zoom in a little bit? I think
whoops.
A little bigger.
Sorry. So nothing actually got copied over to the task table, and I did that sort of by design. What's happening is it's outputting a table of records that it will create when I remove the comments out of that section of the script. So you can see it's linking to each of the projects and then linking to the relevant template. So if I go into my script, you'll see it's not particularly long. It's under 50 lines. And if I can explain, hopefully it's big enough, what each section of the script is doing. It's not doing it on a single project. It's looking at the entire projects table, and then it's going through each project. It's looking at what type of project it is, then looking at each type, all of its template tasks, and then finding which one of those is missing. And then if it's missing, then it's going to create a new record in the task table linked to both. Now that I look at this, this is actually backwards. So I'm going to fix that really quick. And then I'm going to remove the comments so that now when it goes through, it should hopefully actually create these records. So if I exit out of here and click finish, finish editing. Now if I click run and cross my fingers, okay, so it worked. So now it's gone in and added all of the appropriate tasks for each project. If we go down to Elm Court, you'll remember this already had a couple of template tasks in there already. None of these are duplicates because it saw oh, this one was already in here. I don't need to create another one.
Gotta give Kavan is impressed with your flat map usage.
You know, good old flat map. When you start dealing with JavaScript and arrays and something like scripting an Airtable, where you're oftentimes creating an array of records, record values that you want to create. If you have to deal with linked records, you might end up doing what I'm doing, which if I make this big again, I'm going through each project record in my base. So there's 3 of those. And then I'm getting the template that it's applied to. In this case, I think Elm Avenue or Grove or whatever had the average template assigned. So I'm looking at the linked record to the project. And then that linked record has a whole bunch of other linked records. So the template has something like 7 linked records that I may or may not have to create. And that's an array, but I'm already inside of another array. That array is the projects. So what flat map does, it prevents you from having an array inside of an array. What it does is it just sort of outputs a single array of updates, because that's effectively what I want at the end of the day. I only want one array of updates. I don't care how many, projects are being assigned to it. It doesn't really matter. You can see they're all sort of lined up by how they're ordered in that first view. But I don't need a separate array for each batch of project. Something that I could have done and chose not to do was at the bottom of, instead of using a flat map, use for each or something. And then at the end of that for each, create those records for that particular project, then move to another project and create those records and then move on. I think it's oftentimes more efficient to update them all at once, so your script doesn't get stuck in this array.
Yeah.
And
So
then I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, is it kind of like, it's like spreading the array and like,
yes.
Okay. All right.
It's spreading, which is like if I had something like down here and said, let spread equals.
Right.
It's doing that basically.
Right. No, that's cool. I didn't know about that. I'll definitely have to try that out.
Flat map. It's so many. I think I found flat map when I was doing master calendar, because master calendar was very similar in that I had all of these different arrays, but I just had one calendar, and I don't need all of these things nested. I just need a list of events, and flat map, game changer.
Except you're using slice and not splice.
I know. And the reason I'm glad you brought that up is I did it wrong down here. If I do, hold on. And now I have to delete some records so you can see what I want it to do. I'm going to delete these, because if I ran this again, it would create no records because no records are missing. If I run it again, hopefully it'll do the thing. Yeah, so the reason I didn't use splice, I used slice, is because I wanted to output. Imagine I had like hundreds of records I needed to create, which I had to do in my client case. It was a data migration thing. We were migrating thousands of records. I think we ended up at like 42,000 records. What I wanted was each batch that you're doing, tell me what record what project we're currently on, so that if I run into an error, I know, okay, I could pick back up from this record ID and not do the whole thing over if I need to make some adjustments in my script. If I used splice, it would have been a little bit harder to have this sort of output, but it's not necessary. I think I still could have done it. It just would have been a little bit difficult. But with the second run, you could see only 2 records are created because the other 2 projects had all of their necessary tasks already in here. And the 2 that I deleted are the 2 that are missing. And that's why only 2 were created here.
Okay, you got to run it one more time just to make sure it doesn't create any.
Yeah, I didn't build in any sort of error handling in this demo, so nothing should happen.
All right. There you go.
All right.
Yep, nothing happened.
It worked.
Awesome.
Awesome. Very cool. It's great to always get into the scripting world and hopefully give people a little bit of desire to dig in and do some scripting and utilize FlatMap.
It'll save you time.
Yeah. Kavan also noticed I was also going to bring up your interesting filter X equals X to get rid of nulls. Yeah.
So that's the other thing. When you have one more time, my computer is running a little slow. Sorry. So what I'm doing here, missing templates, is finding all of the template tasks that aren't already, created in the actual task table for that particular project. And the example we just did, right, 2 of the projects had all of their tasks already in there. There are no missing templates. So this map, it's not going to throw an error. It's just going to be an empty array. And if I tried to pass that to this create records async thing, an array with a bunch of stuff in it, and then a couple of empty, just a couple of null values, Airtable is going to be like, I don't know what to do with this. I can't update a null record or create a null record that you didn't give me any information. So at the end of my variable that's creating this updates array, at the bottom it says filter X equals X. That's just basically saying, is there anything there? I don't care what it is, as long as it's not null or undefined, then keep it in the array. If it's null or undefined, remove it from the array, which means this at the bottom now has clean information to get with. And as long as I've mapped my fields appropriately, then it should create the records with no problem.
Love it.
Great stuff. Thank you, Camille. That is a wrap for this week. Thank you, Ali and Russ. Thank you for joining us. And as always, we will see you guys next week on a new edition of the Built on Air podcast. Until then, we'd love to see what you all build on air. Take care.